Beneath the morning's lingering veil, cloaking the historic grandeur of Florence, a profound shift commences, not through martial might or royal decree, but by the subtle yet potent forces of accumulating wealth and strategically cultivated influence. Within hushed counting houses, where flickering candlelight illuminates ledgers destined to redefine national destinies, the precise scratch of quills chronicles transactions that weave a tapestry from the bustling docks of London to the vibrant bazaars of Constantinople. Here, a family of merchants dares to envision a future extending beyond the familiar horizons of commerce, venturing into territories previously exclusive to royalty. The year is 1429, and Giovanni Deci de' Medici, amidst documents bearing papal authorization, traces with his time-worn fingers the intricate financial networks, invisible threads of power stretching across Christendom. He cannot foresee that his passing will bequeath a legacy to a son whose acumen will elevate monarchs, nor that his great-grandson will become the very emblem of Renaissance splendor. What he grasps with an insight born of discerning patterns others overlook is that true ascendancy originates not from lineage, but from indispensability, and that a family bold enough to render themselves vital to both pontiffs and princes might etch their names amongst the stars. The thoroughfares of Florence gleam from the previous night's precipitation, their stony passages reflecting a dawning, steady luminescence. Within narrow lanes, where the comforting aroma of freshly baked bread mingles with the sharp tang of the forge, where the sonorous chime of church bells contends with the clamor of vendors and the percussive rhythm of artisans' hammers, a transformation germinates. This revolution unfolds not with the clash of steel or impassioned pronouncements, but with meticulously kept accounts, with gleaming florins, and with favors too significant to dismiss. Giovanni Deci de' Medici occupies his unpretentious counting house as the 14th century draws to a close. His seasoned digits traverse columns of figures representing far more than mere profit. Before him lie documents bearing the insignia of distant metropolises: Rome, London, Bruges, Naples, each paper a strand in the intricate web he has spent decades carefully constructing across the known world. His gaze, sharp as a hawk's, despite the passage of years, scrutinizes not only immediate dealings, but the underlying currents they reveal, the burgeoning opportunities they present, and the influence they promise to confer. Beyond his confined vantage point, the Republic thrums with the vital energy of a city poised between the established traditions of medieval guilds and the nascent aspirations of the Renaissance. Wool merchants engage in lively negotiations beneath the shadows of nascent towers, while apprentices dart between counting houses, their satchels laden with silver coin. Guild halls resonate with fervent discussions concerning taxation and vital trade arteries. Their ornate facades proudly display the emblems of crafts that have sustained families for generations. Yet, beneath this familiar cadence, more potent forces are at play, currents that the patriarch has mastered, much like a mariner discerning the shifting winds upon an open sea. From modest workshops where raw wool was transmuted into affluence, his family's rise commenced, meticulously built over generations of shrewd dealings, fostering trust one transaction at a time. While other prominent houses boasted of ancient lineages or military conquests, this lineage possessed a distinct inheritance, an intimate understanding of commodity flow, credit dynamics, and the art of transforming individual prosperity into collective dominion. Each succeeding generation added layers of expertise, akin to artisans refining techniques passed down through paternal lines. Innovation, rather than conflict, heralds this revolution. Where other financiers contented themselves with simple exchanges, the elder patriarch conceived of something unprecedented, a true pan-continental financial institution interconnected by letters of credit, enabling merchants to conduct business across vast distances without the inherent risks of transporting physical currency. His ingenious system allowed a Flemish wool purchaser to acquire goods using credit established in Bruges, while a Roman cardinal could finance monumental construction projects through funds deposited in London. Each exchange fortified the burgeoning network, simultaneously generating profits that compounded like interest. These groundbreaking instruments became the foundational blocks of an empire constructed not of land, but of unwavering trust. A mere parchment bearing his seal, commanded greater sway in certain circles than a duke's pronouncement, for merchants recognized that commitments backed by this formidable enterprise would be upheld, irrespective of wars, plagues, or political turmoil. This steadfast reliability transmuted paper into authority, forging a currency more valuable than gold, the currency of absolute confidence. The Vatican's financial dealings proved the crucial element that elevated regional success to international prominence. When Pope John XXIII sought a financier adept at managing the complex accounts of an institution spanning Christendom, the family's reputation for discretion and competence made the choice inevitable. Suddenly, funds derived from tithes and pilgrimages flowed through their counting houses, while expenditures from the Vatican, ranging from cathedral construction to diplomatic disbursements, passed through meticulously guarded ledgers. The management of church finances demanded not merely probity, but absolute confidentiality, as knowledge of papal financial transactions held the potential to sway the balance of European politics. Branch establishments proliferated across Europe, like seeds carried on favorable currents. In Rome, an elegant palazzo housed the operations overseeing the Vatican's most sensitive affairs. A London outpost catered to English wool merchants, whose trade with Flemish cities generated substantial profits. Bruges emerged as the nexus for northern European activities, its waterways facilitating the movement of goods acquired through credit originating in Tuscan vaults. Each new location amplified the network's strength, while extending its reach into markets previously beyond the grasp of any singular entity. Success stemmed from the recognition that intelligence, like currency, traveled widely. Every transaction brought vital news: which cities thrived, which rulers faced dissent, which trade routes grew perilous, and which opportunities beckoned for those positioned to seize them. Agents served a dual role, functioning as both financiers and intelligence gatherers. Their dispatches enabled foresight, anticipating market shifts by months, even years. Knowledge emerged as the ultimate commodity, surpassing tangible assets in value, for it amplified the worth of all else. The Republic itself reaped immense benefits from this expanding prosperity. As profits accrued, substantial allocations were directed towards projects that bolstered the merchant city. Hospitals were erected to tend to the indigent and infirm, their construction providing employment while showcasing civic virtue. Churches received generous donations, funding artistic commissions whose beauty reflected favorably upon both faith and benefactor. Public works projects enhanced infrastructure, while cultivating goodwill among citizens who might otherwise harbor suspicion towards commercial opulence. Santa Maria del Fiore, the magnificent cathedral that had commanded construction efforts for generations, received contributions that sustained its progress when other funding faltered. Morning perambulations through the construction site became a ritual, marked by discussions of advancement between the financier and the master builders, whose visions exceeded their immediate financial means. His endowments secured not merely stone and mortar, but the enduring gratitude of a city that measured worth through enduring monuments. Every florin expended on the cathedral's completion represented an investment in reputation, yielding dividends long after the donor had joined his ancestors. Beyond simple philanthropy, patronage extended into strategic investments in the city's future. Promising young scholars received stipends, enabling their pursuit of studies in law, medicine, and philosophy. Artists were granted commissions, allowing them to hone their craft while creating works that beautified the Republic. The most gifted were afforded opportunities to travel, broadening their intellectual horizons while disseminating civic influence to distant courts. Each beneficiary emerged as an ambassador for both the city and its benefactor, their accomplishments reflecting credit upon the wisdom that supported them. Picarda Bori brought not only beauty and intelligence to her marriage, but crucial connections to established families whose support proved invaluable in navigating intricate political landscapes. Her relatives held positions within guilds and councils, their influence smoothing pathways that might otherwise have proven arduous for a family whose affluence lacked ancient lineage. Affection flourished alongside advantage, forging bonds that strengthened both heart and fortune. Political maneuvering was marked by subtlety, as the patriarch eschewed the missteps of rivals who pursued office too overtly, understanding that true control often emanates from the periphery rather than the center. Rather than seeking titles that might provoke antagonism, he cultivated networks of obligation, forging alliances more enduring than any formal authority. Loans extended to struggling nobles created grateful allies, while contributions to civic initiatives garnered popular support, providing a bulwark against adversaries who might challenge his burgeoning influence. Council deliberations, where the republic's fate was decided, echoed with voices reflecting his indirect sway. Representatives who owed their positions to his support championed policies fostering commercial expansion and political stability. Trade agreements benefiting far-reaching operations received enthusiastic endorsement from members whose own prosperity was intrinsically linked to maintaining cordial relationships with their benefactor. Opposition occasionally surfaced, but it struggled against the accumulated weight of vested interests profiting from his success. Cosimo de' Medici matured within this milieu of expanding influence and judicious generosity. His father's tutelage emphasized patience over impetuosity, imparting the understanding that enduring control necessitates foundations built over generations rather than forcefully seized in a singular action. Daily perambulations through the city served as instructive lessons in discerning its vital pulse, which families were ascending or declining, which projects were succeeding or faltering, which alliances were strengthening or weakening. Every discourse, every transaction, every act of patronage served as practical education in the nuanced art of influence. Evening hours were dedicated to strategic discussions between father and son. Once the account books were closed and the city settled into its quiet rhythms, hard-won wisdom flowed regarding the delicate equilibrium required to amass authority without provoking the violent backlash that had undone other ambitious families. Cosimo absorbed these lessons with the focused intensity of one destined to inherit not merely wealth, but the profound responsibility of preserving and enhancing an enterprise that employed hundreds and shaped the destinies of thousands. Correspondence arrived from courts across Europe as international connections proliferated. Requests for credit or investment underscored the institution's newfound indispensability to continental commerce. Monarchs seeking funds for military endeavors negotiated terms with representatives who treated them as valued yet not irreplaceable clients. Cardinals requiring loans for ecclesiastical construction discovered that Tuscan financiers understood both spiritual and temporal exigencies. Esteemed families, possessing illustrious histories, mobilized their political capital to challenge regulations that favored commercial enterprises over landed estates, recognizing the threat that innovation posed to their traditional sources of authority. Debates reverberated through guild halls concerning whether financiers merited the same deference afforded to families whose forebears had participated in the Crusades or held office in preceding centuries. The response was not one of direct confrontation, but of demonstrating irrefutable indispensability, rendering opposition seemingly petty and self-defeating. Lorenzo de' Medici, the elder's younger son, developed into a scholar whose intellectual gifts complemented his brother's practical acumen. His studies in canon law and classical literature prepared him for roles demanding both erudition and diplomatic finesse. Correspondence with humanist scholars throughout Italy positioned the family as patrons of intellectual resurgence, as well as commercial innovation. The family library amassed a collection of precious manuscripts, attracting scholars who disseminated word of a cultural sophistication that rivaled their financial prowess. Facilities befitting an institution with a continental reach supplanted the modest counting house as confidence surged. Master artisans crafted facades that proclaimed prosperity without ostentation, their decorative elements speaking to those attuned to architectural symbolism. Interior spaces harmoniously blended functionality with aesthetic appeal, their proportions demonstrating that commercial success need not compromise refined taste. Visitors from distant lands departed with impressions of an establishment that rivaled any found in established capitals. Fra Angelico received patronage enabling the creation of works whose spiritual radiance would inspire generations of believers through sacred art commissions, manifesting devotion that transcended mere civic obligation. Religious themes selected for family chapels reflected not only personal piety, but theological depth, commanding respect from ecclesiastical authorities. Each masterpiece reinforced the bonds between family and church, while creating enduring monuments that preserved the donor's memory long after earthly concerns had faded into irrelevance. Endowments ensured the care of children whose parents succumbed to plague or poverty through charitable foundations established during these prosperous years, addressing needs that governmental and guild resources could not adequately meet. Hospitals expanded their capacities, improving medical care for citizens irrespective of their ability to pay. Educational institutions received support, enabling them to accept promising students from families lacking the means for formal schooling. Every gift generated a reservoir of gratitude that translated into political backing when challenges arose. Experience revealed novel avenues for serving clients while simultaneously generating profits, as financial innovations continued their relentless evolution. Double-entry bookkeeping systems, adopted from northern Italian cities, enabled more precise tracking of complex transactions involving multiple currencies and distant locales. Risk assessment methodologies aided in evaluating the creditworthiness of prospective borrowers, thereby minimizing losses from defaults that could jeopardize the entire enterprise. Principles of insurance began to emerge, designed to safeguard merchants against losses that might otherwise lead to the ruin of diligent businessmen. Traditional craft organizations struggled to adapt to emerging forms of commercial activity, necessitating careful navigation of guild politics. New operations did not fit neatly into established categories, sparking jurisdictional disputes that, if mishandled, could disrupt business activities. Persistent effort established precedents that protected the enterprise while respecting the legitimate interests of established guilds. Compromise solutions satisfied most parties, thereby setting standards that benefited the broader commercial community. Contracts involving parties from disparate kingdoms required enforcement mechanisms that transcended the authority of individual rulers, as international law began to evolve to accommodate financial innovations crossing traditional frontiers. Commercial disputes necessitated resolution procedures acceptable to both parties, irrespective of their differing legal traditions. Standards for currency exchange, credit verification, and debt recovery emerged through practical application rather than theoretical design. Each successful resolution strengthened the frameworks that allowed commerce to flourish amidst political fragmentation. European conflicts disrupted conventional trade patterns while simultaneously generating demand for financial services to support military endeavors, presenting both opportunities and significant perils. Loans to equip armies yielded substantial profits, provided the borrowers ultimately emerged victorious. However, defaults by defeated rulers could result in catastrophic losses. Strategies were developed to manage these risks, while simultaneously positioning operations to benefit from whichever outcomes materialized. Neutrality evolved into a valuable asset, as all factions recognized the advantages of maintaining access to financial services, thereby transcending political allegiances. The specter of death stalked European cities with unprecedented ferocity during plague years, testing the resilience of every institution. Enterprises reliant on personal relationships faced extinction when key personnel succumbed to disease, which spared neither rich nor poor. Survival was contingent upon a confluence of prudence, good fortune, and organizational robustness, enabling operations to persist despite devastating attrition. Recovery efforts underscored the crucial role played in rebuilding communities shattered by demographic catastrophe. Affluence facilitated patronage, attracting artists and scholars whose works would define an entire era as cultural transformation accompanied commercial success. Humanism began to take root in the fertile soil of Tuscany, enriched by prosperity, liberating talented individuals from the constraints of subsistence. Ancient texts garnered renewed attention from scholars whose research was funded by financial gains rather than ecclesiastical benefices. Classical learning merged with Christian faith to forge an intellectual synthesis that would reshape European thought for centuries to come. The patriarch's advanced age served as a poignant reminder that even the most successful enterprises necessitate meticulous succession planning as legacy concerns occupied his final years. Conversations with Cosimo became increasingly detailed, focusing on strategies for preserving what had been meticulously constructed while adapting to the inevitable changes that future generations would confront. Written directives accumulated alongside the account books, their guidance designed to assist successors in avoiding missteps that could unravel decades of patient endeavor. Wisdom, hard won through experience, emerged as the most invaluable inheritance a parent could bestow. The winter of 1429 marked the elder's passing, finding him surrounded by tangible evidence of achievements that had transformed not only his family's fortunes, but the very concept of commercial possibility. The account books chronicled assets spanning continents, while correspondence files preserved relationships that connected the Republic to every significant city in Christendom. More significantly, institutional frameworks had been established, enabling operations to continue irrespective of individual mortality. Personal success had been transmuted into systemic capability. The city mourned a benefactor whose generosity had touched countless lives, while simultaneously acknowledging achievements that brought honor to the entire Republic through funeral ceremonies reflecting a duality of grief and celebration. Processions wound their way through streets lined with buildings whose construction had benefited from his contributions, hospitals whose facilities had been expanded by his donations, and churches whose beauty had been enhanced by his patronage. Representatives from distant cities attended, their presence a testament to international respect, elevating local ceremonies into events of continental import. Something far more precious than material wealth was bequeathed to Cosimo, a functional system that generated influence through service rather than subjugation. The institution his father had architected operated according to principles that benefited clients while enriching its proprietors, fostering sustainable prosperity and growing stronger with each passing year. Crucially, he inherited the accumulated wisdom of a man who understood that enduring influence is forged through generations of patient construction, rather than through dazzling but ephemeral gestures. The Republic underwent a profound transformation as 1429 concluded, and a new decade dawned. Where the city had once relied primarily on the production of wool and traditional crafts, it now functioned as the financial nexus of Europe. Gold flowed through its arteries, carrying intelligence from London to Constantinople, while decisions emanating from modest counting houses dictated the fate of kingdoms. Young men across Italy now aspired to careers in finance rather than warfare, recognizing that commercial success offered a more potent pathway to influence than military conquest. Prosperity fueled experimentation in art, learning, and thought, shaping an era as Renaissance aspirations began to manifest concretely. Scholars converged from across Europe, seeking patronage that enabled their research into classical texts and philosophical inquiries. Artistic pursuits flourish as creators vie for assignments, granting them the freedom to experiment with novel methodologies while producing works of unparalleled aesthetic appeal. The groundwork meticulously established over numerous years of dedicated effort now underpins a cultural efflorescence poised to radiate brilliance for generations. A pervasive gloom blankets the path leading to Venice. Cosmo de' Medici urges his steed onward through a relentless autumn downpour, transforming parched earth into treacherous mud and unsettling firm resolve into creeping uncertainty. Behind him, the imposing spires of Florence dissolve into the encroaching mist, resembling a fading dream at daybreak. Ahead lies an uncertain future of exile, a fate that could culminate in either his demise or his ultimate absolution. His adversaries revel within the very opulent residences where his father once presided over courtly affairs, confident they have definitively shattered the indomitable spirit of ambition that once imperiled their long-held privileges. Yet, concealed within saddlebags that sway with each rhythmic stride of the horse, negotiable instruments valued in excess of many royal treasuries guarantee that this imposed banishment will evolve into something far removed from his opponent's grim prognostication. The Albizzi faction, driven by the desperation of their circumstances, executed their stratagem with surgical precision, leveraging accusations of despotic rule to sway the signoria against him in a single dramatic assembly. Rinaldo degli Albizzi, his silvery beard quivering with an almost divine indignation, stood before the convened council members like a prophet of old, thundering pronouncements against entrenched corruption. The charges reverberated through the hallowed marble halls, spaces that owed their artistic splendor to Medici patronage. He was accused of plotting the Republic's overthrow. His immense wealth was alleged to corrupt the integrity of public administration. His foreign entanglements were portrayed as a threat to Florentine sovereignty. However, banishment takes on a different character when the exiled individual commands financial resources that far eclipse those of his accusers. Within days of his arrival in the tranquil lagoon city, Venetian patricians form a queue outside his temporary dwelling, behaving like supplicants seeking an audience with royalty. His initial financial disbursement to the Doge secures not merely a lifeline of economic assistance, but also crucial political protection, effectively transforming his exile into a strategic maneuver. Capital flows from the family's strongholds into Venetian coffers, funding maritime expeditions that safeguard vital trade arteries, while generating profits that escalate with every successful venture. News from home trickles in via merchant caravans, their captains indebted to established lines of credit for the safe delivery of their precious cargo. The Republic finds itself navigating a succession of crises as established families demonstrate greater acumen in winning council votes than in effectively managing continental commerce. Agricultural crop failures deplete the state's treasury, while its amateur financial stewards falter in their attempts to secure loans that once flowed effortlessly through established channels. The imposition of higher taxes, coupled with dwindling revenue streams, engenders a pervasive popular discontent, capable of toppling governments with greater alacrity than invading armies. A mere 12 months is sufficient to impress upon Florence the stark difference between inherited privilege and demonstrable competence. Workshops cease operations as the cost of importing essential raw materials becomes prohibitive. Skilled artisans seek opportunities in other urban centers where employment remains readily available. Monumental construction endeavors, which had provided sustenance for numerous laborers, grind to an abrupt halt as funding sources evaporate. Even the Grand Cathedral remains incomplete, its unfinished dome serving as a daily monument to dashed aspirations and vanished affluence. Whispered discussions circulate through taverns and guild halls. His name is spoken with increasing frequency as citizens recollect how vastly different their lives once were. They recall a time when family representatives facilitated trade with efficiency. They remember when their financial contributions supported vital enterprises. They acknowledge how their philanthropic endeavors provided essential social services that government budgets were ill-equipped to provide. The passage of time transmutes current grievances into wistful nostalgia. Present hardships render past abundance akin to a lost paradise, squandered through imprudence. An invitation arrives in October of the year 1434. It is delivered by a delegation whose humble demeanor suggests entreaty rather than negotiation. Venice has imparted patience to the exiled nobleman, while Florence has been schooled in the harsh realities of necessity, thereby creating the conditions for his return and inverting the established hierarchy of power. He will no longer operate from the shadows cast by the authority of others. This triumphant homecoming will establish precedents that redefine Republican traditions and usher in new societal structures. Crowds line every thoroughfare, from the city's ancient gates to his magnificent palazzo. As the most influential figure in Europe reclaims his rightful inheritance, children who have never laid eyes upon him cheer enthusiastically, their parents weeping tears of profound relief. Merchants whose businesses had languished and withered during his absence press forward, eager to kiss his outstretched hands. Even rival families dispatch envoys to tender their submission, masked as a welcoming gesture, comprehending that open opposition now portends economic ruin rather than mere political contestation. Within the cavernous expanse of the Great Hall, where his father once received dignitaries from foreign lands, the returning leader addresses the city's civic leaders, their countenances betraying a spectrum of emotions ranging from profound gratitude to palpable apprehension. His pronouncements possess a silken cadence that artfully conceals an underlying steel resolve, offering clemency to those who embrace the emerging order, while subtly alluding to the repercussions awaiting persistent defiance. The address, lasting a mere 10 minutes, nevertheless carries implications that will fundamentally reshape Florentine governance for decades to come. Capital flows instantaneously as formerly frozen assets thaw under the invigorating warmth of rekindled confidence. Lines of credit are re-established for entrepreneurs whose ventures had teetered precariously on the precipice of insolvency. Construction recommences on projects that had languished in an unfinished state. The bustling harbor teems with renewed activity as vessels resume voyages along routes they had abandoned during the interim period. Within weeks, the city hums with an economic vitality that prompts its citizens to question how they ever envisioned a future devoid of such capable leadership. Yet, this restoration is accompanied by subtle yet profound alterations that distinguish the new administration from its predecessor. Whereas his father governed through nuanced counsel veiled as advice, the patriarch now presides through established mechanisms that acknowledge prevailing realities while meticulously preserving the outward semblance of republicanism. Positions within the council are bestowed upon individuals whose unwavering loyalty supersedes their noble lineage, while fiscal assessments reflect astute political judgment rather than archaic customs. Dissenting voices find themselves relegated to the periphery, not through overt suppression, but through engineered irrelevance. The Palazzo Medici ascends to prominence during these halcyon years, standing as a monumental testament to enduring authority. Brunelleschi's progeny designed